From LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, host of Everyday Better, an award-winning podcast dedicated to personal development. Join me every week for captivating stories and research to find more fulfillment in your work and personal life. Listen to Everyday Better on the LinkedIn Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From LinkedIn News, I'm Jessie Hempel, host of the Hello Monday podcast. Start your week with the Hello Monday podcast. We'll navigate career pivots. We'll learn where happiness fits in. Listen to Hello Monday with me, Jessie Hempel, on the LinkedIn Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our throwback episode. In our throwback episodes, we are reintroducing you to some of our most popular episodes. This is great for new listeners who want to learn more about the work we've done in the past, and it's a great refresher if you've been a listener for a long time. Enjoy. We are here with my good friend Philip. We actually connected at Chicago's podcast movement conference, and it's funny, Phil. At the time, I didn't realize how influential you were in the online world, and so I'm really appreciative of you taking your time to chat with us today.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure meeting you there, and good being on the show with you.
So how about we start off with a brief intro?
Sure. Philip Taylor, and I am married, have 3 kids here in Texas. Was born in kind of a small town in Louisiana. Followed my dad's footsteps in the accounting world, got my CPA, and decided ultimately to choose that path right out of college. A few years into it, I just discovered it really, the traditional, I guess, financial, corporate and service world wasn't necessarily for me, but I didn't necessarily have a good outlet yet or something to jump to. So in 2004, I discovered financial blogs. Discovered there are these people online who are crazy enough to talk about money and share their own stories and successes and tips. And I was just pulled into the content and just read as much as I could and just loved it, and decided one day in 2007 to start my own site. I figured with my CPA background and my own personal experience, I had something to give. So that's how ptmoney.com got started. And that's just a site to share my own experiences and tips and tricks with money. A few years into that, I took it full time, so that became what I did from a side hustle to my full-time business. And then a year after that, I decided to bring every one of those financial bloggers together for a conference that we now call FinCon, which we're in our 6th year. And so now I'm running both businesses, the blog, PT Money, still doing that, and then run the conference once a year, FinCon, and just have a blast running both businesses and sort of, waking up and choosing every day what to work on and what to do and kind of calling my own shots. It's a lot of fun to do, but blessed to be in this point, and certainly enjoy the opportunity to be on your podcast. Negotiation isn't something necessarily I think that I do on a daily basis in terms of that terminology, but when I sit and think about it, I mean, there's so many things I've had to do to get both my businesses and my life set up the way I have it now, and certainly it's required some negotiation along the way. So I'm looking forward to being on this and on this podcast and talking about this subject in this way with you.
That's great, man. I love that you said that, because a lot of people, they don't realize how often they negotiate until you sit down and talk about the definition and exactly what it means, and then you're like, wow, it's everywhere.
Yeah, well, a negotiation can kind of, I think, have a negative connotation in a way, like you're taking something from someone else. But in most cases, I try to be a giver first and try to find, I guess, more pluses on their side whenever I'm negotiating. And so I don't know, I just try to look at it in a positive sense like that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny you said you look at yourself as a giver, because one of the most popular negotiation books that came out in the last couple of years was, I believe it's Givers and Takers, or Give and Take. And it's all about the essentially it's almost like karma. What you give out, you get back, and you give without the anticipation of getting something back, but the benefit it has in negotiation.
Yep.
So that's huge. So tell us a little bit more about FinCon, because that it's actually coming up next month. So hopefully some of our listeners will take a look at it and maybe swing by San Diego. But tell us how it started and where it is now. Maybe like how many people you started with and how many people you're at this year.
Sure, sure. We started with 250 people, and most of those folks were what I would call personal finance bloggers, people who I was interacting with online when I started up my own site. This weird community of people, like I said, who's brave enough to either anonymously or out publicly talk about money. And as you know, it's probably one of the last taboos in our society. And so, we're the people online having those conversations. And so I knew a few years into hanging out with that community and being a member of that community that I wanted to get to know them a little further, more in detail, and be face-to-face with them. So when I would go to other conferences, I would bump into members of our community and would just love hanging out with them the whole time. And so I decided that we needed to have a bigger meetup, and it was really just an idea of a meetup initially, but it, when I guess threw it out there, I was brave enough to say, let's call it a conference, and invite our business partners out, invite some speakers, and make it a whole deal to, at a cool location and have fun with it and see what it could be. Like, I didn't necessarily put a cap on it. So we've grown from 250, and we'll have about 1,150 folks this year in San Diego. Information is at finconexpo.com if you wanted to kind of see the visual of it. But it's an awesome community of people who love calling themselves money nerds and don't mind being attached to that stigma, and just we feel like we're collectively having a conversation online that ultimately can help consumers, both U.S. and abroad, with their money, help them make smarter decisions and lead to a more positive financial future for the world. So that's kind of what we're doing, and I'm lucky enough to bring everyone together with the conference.
That's awesome. So how were you able to get initial buy-in for the first FinCon? Because I imagine it would be difficult for you to take all of these people who are used to getting their voice out there online to actually come together in a physical way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some pent-up demand to be together, so I knew that was in play. So I was lucky in that regard. But I would say my best choice initially, now that I think about it, was to essentially show everyone that because back then I certainly wasn't like an A-list blogger or something like that. No one was necessarily coming to see me. So I knew that I needed to have the right people there. I knew that when people looked at the conference website, when they looked and saw the attendee list, they needed to see their friends there, and their friends and the people who they look up to in our community. And so one of the tactics I use, if you want to call it a tactic, I guess, is to leverage social proof to show the faces of the other people who were attending. So one of the first things I did on the website when I built it out was to put a Facebook like box, and those show faces on them, whoever is liking it. And so I think that had an instant social proof effect for it. Oh, if JD Roth, who's like the godfather of personal finance at Get Rich Slowly, likes this conference and he's going, then certainly that's something I want to be a part of. And so I think the most important thing early on was just getting those influencers involved. And so when you've got all that sort of on your side, it's hard for people to say, oh, this operation, what is this? I don't trust it. So you overcome a lot of those, I think, initial hurdles with the negotiation when you have sort of an army of support on your side. And so whenever I would get a new speaker lined up, I would put their face out there and let everyone know who was coming. And so that's kind of the thing. I used a lot of social proof, I guess, early on to kind of prove myself and give people trust.
I love that. It's a brilliant tactic, really. I like the social proof because you're relying on Cialdini's, one of his 7 Keys to Influence. So another book recommendation to the audience is Influence by Robert Cialdini. Fantastic book. So I love that. And essentially what you were doing in this multi-party negotiation when it comes to persuading people is you were showing your leverage, your strength, your power. That was a really smart way to go.
Yeah. And backing up a bit, so how did I get someone like JD Roth to be involved, right? Mm-hmm. So these influential people, how do you get those initial, yeses? And for me, it was figuring out what they wanted out of the equation. A lot of these people were A-listers, but they didn't want to plan an event. They weren't event planners. They didn't, because that's a big undertaking. I was the one taking that risk, taking all the financial risk. Yet I didn't necessarily want the spotlight when I got there. I wasn't going to do a keynote. I wasn't going to be on the stage a lot. So I was actually giving them the free opportunity to come to an event where they're headlining. So I'm putting them on stage as the first keynote speaker and, really sort of raising their profile in our community as kind of the influencers by putting them on stage. And so that's how I got those initial set. So I needed those guys, and I was willing to give them a lot to be there and be a part of it, because I knew they were so key to having success.
So when you say you were willing to give them a lot, what do you mean by that? Like, what kind of things were you willing to offer to get them to support you in that way?
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/marketer. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, the first year, I didn't have much of an idea if the conference was going to make any money at all. So to be honest with you, I didn't necessarily promise a speaking fee. I actually ended up at the end of the conference having some money left over, and so I did divvy some of that out to our speakers. But initially, I didn't throw that out there. I basically just offered the opportunity to keynote at the first one. I said, I'll make you essentially the star of the show. At the time, J.D. Roth had done a little bit of speaking. He was having some success, obviously, with Get Rich Slowly. And so I think, for him, it was an opportunity to come and give back to the community that had supported him, but also sort of, be seen, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, be seen as the influencer there, be seen as the first keynote for FinCon. I mean, that's a prestigious opportunity. And then secondly, I also reached out to Pat Flynn, who had never given a keynote before. Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income, who I think you've had on your podcast. And I said, Pat, our community loves what you're doing. We want to hear from you personally. So come out to our, little blogger event here and be one of our first keynotes. And so I asked Pat to do his first keynote. And at the time, I just think it hit him at a point where he was wanting to be challenged with public speaking. And so I actually became Pat Flynn's first keynote. And so you can go on YouTube and see him do his first talk at FinCon. Back then, like I said, we were called the Financial Blogger Conference. But I think just giving them the opportunity, because our community was such a text-based, sort of behind the blogging, behind the keyboard community, this was their chance to kind of come out in the open and be in front of a real audience. And so I think just having that in my back pocket was enough. I didn't have to pay them necessarily that first year.
I'm definitely going to look at that video. I'm looking forward to that now. But even though you didn't pay them with money, you did confer value, and
Sure.
That's important. With when it comes to negotiation and persuasion, you need to work with what you have, and sometimes when you don't have a lot, you have to be creative, and you found a way to do it. And get those big names to show up.
Yep, and that's evolved over the years. So we've done, as the years have progressed, I certainly couldn't use that same sort of approach, but, we've done things like set up speakers for book signings, purchase some of their books in lieu of their speaking fee, certainly negotiated press for them, because we are a media conference, so we can actually, I think one of the speakers came one year, and essentially what they wanted is for opportunity to connect with all the attendees, to do potential interviews for their book release. And so I leveraged essentially the media of our community to get that speaker there, and they were totally satisfied, because they didn't need another speaking fee. They could get that at Joe Schmo corporate event, next weekend. But what they couldn't get for free anywhere was help with promoting their book, and so we were able to do that. So we always look for. I'm a cheap guy when it comes down to it, so I'm always looking for that little, opportunity to give them something that our community already sort of naturally has built in.
When did you realize that you had that kind of social leverage? Was it readily apparent to you when you first started, or did it kind of hit you as you were able to get these bigger names?
Yeah, it's definitely grown through the years. You know, I'm certainly proud of our community, and I understand the power that collectively we wield. But at the same time, I'm sort of an independent guy, and I respect sort of the independence of each of the publishers. And so I don't know. I don't necessarily like using that a lot, but our community is powerful, and I think I've realized that as we've continued to grow. And I think speakers to a fault now sort of see me as the kingmaker in terms of putting them on stage at my event, and I don't necessarily like that, because our event has always been sort of a community-based, open source event where people kind of come together and collaborate and share ideas, and it's more of a flat hierarchy. Yeah. And so I don't know. Sometimes I don't like necessarily the idea that I'm going to sort of crown, the next big people in our space. So I'm not necessarily comfortable with that. I don't know if I've answered your question with what I'm rambling about right now.
No, I think that's a really interesting answer.
Yeah.
I think that's you're one of the first people who's described their power in that way. You know, you have the power, but not really kind of comfortable with that label.
Yeah.
Of having. That's interesting, but you seem to me like a benevolent ruler, so it can't be that bad. Well, good stuff. Well, have you ever negotiated with hotels or for discounts for some of the conference locations?
Absolutely. You know, if you're ever doing a conference of your own and you're in search of a place to do it, I would certainly recommend one of the hotel search firms that are out there. We use one called Helms Briscoe, and we have a contact there that she essentially puts out requests for bids into different cities and hotels, and everyone comes back with what they'll do for us. And so, that service is certainly helpful, and it's free to us. The hotels just have to pay that broker to make that possible. But we negotiate. The contracts are in depth, and we try to get as much as we can. Certainly we're bringing a lot of revenue to these hotels. In my case, over $500,000 of revenue is going into this hotel with food and beverage, with AV, with rooms booked. We're spending a lot of money at this location. So we expect a lot. We expect the conference space for free. We expect a certain amount of comped rooms for us as staff for free. And man, there's a whole litany of things that we try to get, and even personally down to hotel reward points. I try to score as many of those for every contract as I can get, which allows me to travel, for free for the rest of the year and stay at my hotels for free. So, we try to get as much as possible, from the hotels. But like I said, I would go to a professional who's used to talking to hotel people.
Yeah.
So
that's utterly mind-blowing, because since this is a space that I'm not familiar with, so it's really fascinating to me to see how negotiation works in these different locations, in these different realms. And I never would have thought that getting the conference location for free was an option. But again, since I'm not familiar, I never really took the time to consider the leverage and the power and money that you bring into the hotel.
Sure.
I didn't think about that, but $500,000, that's pretty significant. So they owe you a lot for choosing them.
That's the way I see it, and I'm not. I'm sort of the golden unicorn in the event planning space, because I'm a solopreneur, and I'm not necessarily this corporate or association type event that's just going to go to the same hotel year after year after year, and sort of be the bread and butter of the conference or event business. Mm-hmm. I'm like the ice cream on, the sugar on top, basically. So whenever a hotel gets me and gets our event at their hotel, it may be a little more difficult to work with us, because we're kind of a small organization, or we're not necessarily we don't have the corporate sort of event team, but I think we're everyone's bonus for the year. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I think they really value bringing us in for that extra little kicker.
Yeah. So I guess that nugget, that's a big nugget of wisdom for the audience, is take some time to really go through a thorough negotiation analysis to see where your power lies, because a lot of times it looks like you're coming to the hotel saying, "Hey, can I get a discount, please, please, please?" But in reality, they're the ones that want you more.
Yep. And with hotels, every market's going to be different every year, so we're lucky in that we are flexible and we can move the conference around every year. And so, we you never know. Like this year, we ended up in San Diego, and 3 years ago, we never could have done that for less than $200 a night, and we got the hotel price down to $169 a night is what we got for our attendees for the actual hotel night. But we were able to get the space for free and get a really good deal otherwise. So. I would, in the hotel industry, it's all about, sort of what's hot, what's next. And cities are building out different hotels every year, and so prices are going to change from year to year. And so we just keep, renegotiating and doing new contracts every year. Try not to lock ourselves down into anything long term, but always sort of see what's available.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift a little bit to from corporate style negotiation with another business to negotiating at home, because in your profile on your site you described your wife as frugal. So I would imagine taking on the initial expense was might have been a hard sell. So how were you for the first FinCon? So how were you able to get her on board for that expense?
Man, I got her on board, I think, because I just caught her at a weak moment. I had just taken my blog full time a year earlier, and that was a huge leap for us. And so I'll back up a little bit and talk about that experience. I mean, I wanted to be a full time blogger for a couple of years going into that, and that was something that was stressing her out, and not really something she was on board yet, because we were about to have our first kid, and so. What we had done, though, is the past, 3 or 4 years of our marriage, we had spent fixing our financial life, getting rid of debt, building up extra savings, and just doing the things it took to be a little more flexible with my job situation. And so my company was going to send me on a 3-week trip to India, and it was the second time I was going to go there, but it was going to be, I loved it the first time I went, but going back again wasn't as appealing. And it was going to be over my daughter's first birthday. And so, my wife was like, "Oh, that stinks. You're going to miss her birthday." And I said, "Well, here's what we could do." I took that moment to negotiate.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I said, I could become a full-time blogger, do that, and then I could stay home for the birthday. And she said, "Okay, go for it." And so I used that moment to kind of make that leap. And then I think a year later, I had figured out the whole full-time blogging thing, and had seen some success in that. And so I think it gave her confidence that, me being out, that I understood the marketplace that I was kind of working in, and that I understood what was best, career-wise for me and for our family at that point. And so I think because of those successes, I was just kind of building on that, and she saw that as kind of building on that success. And so, I remember asking her, laying in bed at night, what if I started this conference, what if I do that? And she was just sick of hearing about it. So she said, just get up and go make the darn site and invite people right now and stop talking to me about it. So that's kind of how that went down.
Nice. One of the things I really love about the story is that it highlights the fact that power and leverage are relative. It shifts. So in your case with the negotiation with your wife, with whether or not you could leave, you took that opportunity. You knew what you wanted the whole time, and you waited until the time was right to make that ask. And that was really smart. I have a 10-month-old at home, so I could imagine my wife would have me do whatever it took to make sure I was there for his birthday on October 5th. She's already talking about plans right now. I was like, he won't remember this, but I keep that to myself.
Yeah, but he'll see the pictures and he'll know that you had it. That's what's important.
I guess what I'm working on with him now is having him hold up his finger and say 1. So we're practicing for those photo ops. So
nice.
We're getting our ducks in a row to make it a fantastic first birthday.
That's great.
Okay, so let's shift again, because I want to leverage your knowledge as a CPA and a successful personal finance blogger, and talk to our audience about some of the financial benefits they could have if they start implementing negotiation skills in their life.
Yeah, so I think just bringing an awareness to your finances is step one. Certainly becoming aware of how you're spending your money, how you're bringing in money, and then taking action on that. So, for instance, as a micro example, and this is, most people I think have heard of this at this point, but I mean, take a look at how much you're spending on your cable bill to watch TV. You could look at that bill and say, is there a small piece of this that I don't need or I could do without? Or could I call the company up and ask for a better rate? It doesn't hurt to ask. Or could I call an additional company and see if they would do better? And I think having that approach, periodically with your finances, finding those little ways to kind of cut back on things you're going to spend money on, those little things can certainly add up, over a lifetime and over the course of your financial history, and can make a big impact, in the future for you. So I certainly think negotiation is something I'm always looking to do. I think there are tools that make that easier nowadays. I think there are even like bill negotiation tools that automate the process for you. One of them is called Truebill, I think. And so you can go to truebill.com, and I'm not associated with them, but truebill.com is their website. Another is sort of on the micro savings side. So a little way to kind of get big results from small impact is a service called digit.co, and they automatically take money from your checking account and put it over into your savings account using their own algorithm based on your previous spending. And so over time, I've seen big results, from just these micro sort of savings, withdrawals from my checking account that I wouldn't have done otherwise probably. And so I'm huge on, automation and looking for ways to kind of make your finances automated and simplified. But at the same time, it doesn't take big moves. Once you set it up, it can be micro transactions, like I said, that can have lasting impact and huge impact down the road.
Wow. I did not know of those resources. So thank you very much. I'm going to check
Absolutely.
those out. One of the things I've been talking about a lot on this podcast is the ability to negotiate things in your personal life and your business life. And I remember the first freebie I put up was, and it's still up there. So if you go to AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com /list, LIST, you can get a list of all of the things in your business life and personal life that could be negotiated. And so I know for me, like once I realized that I could negotiate almost anything, or at least ask. There's no harm in asking. I started negotiating like with Verizon. I had a $50 fee, got it waived. With cable bills, and for instance, it might seem small. I think I got $7 off per month. But the thing is, with those types of expenses like cable bill and your wireless bill and leases, you can negotiate a lot off of leases. Those things compound, so they're monthly expenses, so you'll be able to save a lot over the course of the year.
Yep.
So.
And once you start optimizing, you'll start thinking of other things. It's sort of success breeds success in that area of your life, I think. So
yeah,
just take something on little like that, like your cable bill, and then who knows? Like the next day you could be, saving on something really massive. So
right.
It's maintaining sort of that mindset of, am I optimizing my spending here? Am I paying the best I should be for the things I want in my life?
Right. Good stuff. So let's wrap this up with a challenge to our audience. So if you were to challenge the audience to do one thing in the next week to become a better negotiator, what would it be?
One thing I don't think we do enough of, and this goes for me as well, is making a list, sort of a wish list in our life or in our businesses. And so I think creating that wish list, that, man, this would be really cool to have list, either for your personal life or for your businesses, and having that handy, knowing sort of what these items are on your dream big list, that would come into play huge when it comes to people who are asking something from you in your business, or whenever you're just negotiating in general with your business. And so I can think of, times where people have asked, because now I'm in a position of influence with my event. They ask for extras or for different things, and so I sort of have a running wish list now, of items that I can say, this is kind of what I need, And I think just having that list top of mind like that is super helpful. That way you're not left scrambling, trying to think, on the spot or whatever. And so I think making a list of your wants and wishes and dreams in life, as corny or as simple as that sounds, I think is important, because when you need to make those negotiations, sometimes it's right on the spot. And so having sort of that list in the back of your mind of your wants and wishes is important. I just think it's important to get clear on what you want. Be intentional about your life, and be intentional about kind of what you expect, out of your business dealings and your personal life.
I love it. It's brilliant. What I really love about it is the fact that it's tried and true, and it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they can do today. It's completely in their control, and it's just a choice of whether or not you want to do it. Congratulations! You've just joined an elite club. By listening to a full episode, you're now officially on the Negotiate Anything team. So welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast, because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. The best things in life lie on the other side of difficult conversations. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep getting better. Your relationships will improve, your career will soar, and you'll have the confidence you need to get the most out of these crucial conversations. Again, thank you for joining the team. We're excited to have you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll catch you later.